Hey, this is Patrick Durkin from the Wellness Enterprise, and one of our recent customers is Stephen Kimberly. And Stephen has lived a very interesting life. He's been in the belly of the beast with the pharmaceutical industry and spent decades there. And so when he got his cosmic tower and it made a big difference for him, I asked him if he'd be willing to record some of his experiences. And thankfully for all of us, he said yes. So Stephen, welcome to the Zoom with me today. I'm so thankful that you decided to join me.
Great, thank you, Peter. And I really feel that rather than being a customer, I'm a partner. Because I feel this big movement. It's funny. About 40 years ago, I had a psychic tell me that he was doing a picture reading, but he said, you're a doctor and all this, and eventually you're going to work with a project that involves energy and healing of the whole body, and detects where disease is and heals it by balancing energies. And so that sounds like sounds like the cosmic tower. So
wow. And that was 40 years ago?
40 years ago, yeah.
And so you've just been kind of curious, like, when's it coming?
Yeah, well, initially I thought, well, I'm an internist. I'm an MD internist. And after I left private practice, I went to WebMD. And first of all, I thought in private practice, this must be where I'll get this. No, that wasn't quite it. So WebMD, for almost 20 years, I wrote all their, alternative medicine stuff and all their medical content, really, symptom checker and all that. So it was, and I thought, writing symptom checker, it was like detecting the symptoms, but it couldn't heal, right? So that wasn't it. And then I moved to this pharmaceutical company where, not pharmaceutical, natural supplement company, where I've been formulating for 10 years. And I just left that because they're moving into another product area. But, I've got well, I'll just say this. All my life, my professional life, I've had the idea, and this started when I was 18 or 19, when I knew I wanted to be a healer and work in the healing arts. I saw my father was a surgeon, okay? So he had, his idea and my idea was diametrically opposed. So I saw this big gap, and I saw ignorance on both sides, difficulty understanding on both sides of the natural versus traditional medicine, debate. And, I've always wanted to get something that would fill that gap so that it would bridge it. And I think that, getting medical establishment, scientific establishment, to take the science from water science and get it to the public so they understand it, rather than keeping it, sitting on a shelf somewhere. So anyway, a couple of years ago, a year ago, a friend of mine, Zane Marston, who lives in New Mexico, hope he's okay, they just had a fire there. He was regaling me with tales of his cosmic tower, and he never really explained, how it works. And again, that's a big if, for someone like me who is trained to take things apart and figure out how it works, in terms of healthcare. In other words, how does this medication work? What's the mechanism of action? And so finally, when I was in a desperate state, Better, I was breaking up a 50-year relationship, marriage, selling our home, changing my job. Basically almost losing my job. I guess you'd say the company went away. And breaking my hip in 7 places, 4 surgeries on my hip. This all happened in the last year. Dislocated my left shoulder and now need a shoulder replacement. I had a hip replacement. So it was kind of like all the karma that that I might have possibly accumulated in eons was somehow being burned at the same time. So I was really pushed to the point of near despair. And, I've been on a spiritual path since I was 18. Meditate every day, say decrees. I'm very much into ascended master spirituality. And, but I have a strong feeling that there's something in science that can contribute much more that is in the natural vein. And I really feel that getting the toroidal energy field spread out on Earth, activated on Earth, is a wonderful thing. And it's a thing that could really make a huge difference. In my life, in my experience, I received my tower, a little crack on the side, but you guys gave me a couple bucks to cover that. But it's it's named Oscar, and a little copper on the top. But, I do talk to it sometime and pat it. And, I've been a sensitive all my life. So I feel energy changes very much. And it seems that rather than getting duller as I get older, it's actually getting more sensitive. And I think that is the way things go in a lot of cases. But I noticed an immediate change. And, I was trying to distinguish how much of that change was my desire for the change and how much of it was due to the actual process and to the tower. And, once I started drinking the water and communicating more with the tower, I really felt a deep change in the sense that I was driven really to the point of such despair, family breaking up, not feeling that really anybody cares about me, and which I know is not true, but I mean, this is I've been in bed most of the past year and a half, so I'm, the tower is bringing me out of all that, and it's healing me on a deep, deep level, and I mean, from way before that. I'm talking about healing, the narcissistic wound that, we have as human beings, which occurs in the breaking of our innocence as children. And I guess that's a good way of saying is that the towers is like restores innocence in a way, takes you back to a pure energetic state, which does not involve all the nuances and disturbances that come in life. And in addition, as a scientist, I don't like to call myself anything, but I've noticed other things. And one thing which is really amazing is we have a 5,000-gallon koi pond, so big. And after I got the tower, a week or so afterwards, and it's within the 200 meters of the reach of my tower, and I really feel that the towers do reach out in their beneficial effects, the full 200 meters are around that. But I felt immediately better. So this was really something, remarkable. So this is gold, and I found a way of demonstrating something that might sway some skeptics. All right. So the problem with structured water in terms of making it important to people is that they can't see the change. Actually, the koi pond, I actually saw how structured water gets kind of plates when there's turbulence. If you've seen it like a spring up in the mountains, the water will come up and it won't like dribble. There'll be a connection between almost gel-like, and it was clear in my koi pond, and the koi are just like, we're really happy. But another thing I noticed, the pictures which we store water in and put water in to let it sit overnight because we have well water, really good water. But even with reverse osmosis and all that stuff, after a week or two, it get a little slimy on the inside of the pitcher. Natural thing, and if it were tap water, it'd be a couple days, right? But it doesn't happen with the Cosmic Tower. It doesn't happen, and and I think you can all notice that if you have a tower, probably things are cleaner, and I've just spent a time with an infection from MRSA, which I got from in the hospital, and I can tell you that the bacteria is out there, and there's a lot of MRSA out there, and it's really bad. So, anyway, check this out. All right, so this is water, this structured water from the house. Now, what I see is the gold oil, which is just an oil which has a little bit of gold salt in it, acts differently, and it acts almost geometrically. And if you'll see it, it's not doing what I want it to do. It would line up. So the bubbles would just line up. Let me see if I can get it done. Yeah, here we go. There's just more activity in the, oh, sorry, you can't see this. Anyway, the oil bubbles line up in like almost geometrical patterns. And if you put it in tap water that's not been structured, or water that's not been structured, it doesn't happen. It just kind of sits there. So if you happen to have any, it actually happens with other oils too, but with the gold it's particularly pronounced, probably because of the metallic content.
How long have you been using that oil?
I don't use that much of this because I didn't really feel all that much from it. I shifted from it.
That's right. But you're familiar with the way it looks when you put
oh
it
yeah, oh yeah, very much so.
And so as the tower arrived, you started seeing it differently.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I looked at, I'd been using the oil in other water, and then as soon as I started doing it there, I went, whoa, that's weird. And it's almost like you could draw a line. I mean, they form like little rows. It's really something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your experiences. And while we talk about this as your experience, I just want to visit a topic real quickly, which is that, in the alternative health space, there are disclaimers that if we don't make, then we
sure.
Open
but as a physician, I'm able to make statements. And in my presentations as chief science officer at Q Sciences, that was very clear. I worked with an attorney, and they said, yeah, you don't want to say, you want to go by the FDA rules, et cetera. But it just so happens that if you're a physician, you can actually say those things.
Great. Well, I appreciate you sharing your experience as a physician and as a non-physician and one who gets scared of these regulations. I'll just share that nothing that I'm saying is intended to treat, cure, or prevent disease. And if you have any medical concerns, go see a doctor.
Right.
And then you get to share freely your experience, and I really appreciate that. I'd just like to clarify that, because you know how that legal.
Oh yeah, I know. You gotta see why.
Yeah, so there are a couple things I want to just bring a little bit further forward. So your treatment mechanism for water prior to receiving your Cosmic Tower is reverse osmosis.
Yes. Reverse osmosis and and occasionally we spin water, but I think it's good that the well is only in a pipe for a little while, and it comes from a moving water source down below, so it's probably not as damaged as the water that's been traveling around in galvanized pipes.
And your experiences you have, it looks like, does Oscar, your Cosmic Tower, live on that table in this bedroom like pretty regularly?
Yeah, I actually, I talked to Zane, and I said, is it good to have it closer to you? And he goes, yeah, I figured. So I had it in my bedroom because I'm there more, and I had it on a bureau, and now I put it near my bed. And I think the proximity, I haven't really figured it out, but uh, I can, if I put my hand, if I'm having a difficult day or a great day or whatever, and I put my hand on here, I can hear it. I get a head rush, all this, which is really
Well,
profound.
yeah, some energy is flowing. So I'm going to come back to there for in a second. Let's wrap up the RO piece. So you don't take your tower and put it right next to your water as you pour it. You have it in your home,
Right.
within the 200 meters of your
Yeah.
RO, and your experience is your RO water is staying cleaner and the container is staying more fresh, more clean.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there must be some of a drop off in the energy effects as you get farther away. I mean, it's not going to be like right there, but which would imply that there is some, if you're out there at 200 meters, it's not going to be as strong as if you're right next to it. But that being said, I really think that it has a strong effect in that whole area.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, and then going to this experience here in the room, you've put a piece of copper on top of the tower. Can you tell us a little bit, because it's an area of confusion for people about whether to put their crystals near it or different things.
Right.
And so from your background and experience, like, why did you choose copper and what do you experience with that?
Well, copper's a healing metal, if you will, because it has a very strong electronic, presence, I should say. And so in some ways, it's kind of like the tower because it works, you have the copper structure. And then if you have the structured water, I figure, hey, that's going to be good. And we know that if you actually had physical water contacting copper, as I've got a copper sink, and it's just like green all the time, it's very reactive. I mean, you'll have copper oxide on there in a few hours. So it's interesting you ask about putting crystals on it or something on there to magnify its effects or whatever. And I think you got to be a little careful in the sense that I would do it and I would mentally take a note of whether I felt better. I say this because, remember, about Wilhelm Reich, Freud's student who had the orgone boxes? Yeah. So, he put someone at his place put a tiny bit of radium in the orgone box, and it was a disaster, because it magnified the bad effects of the radiation. But of course, nobody's going to do that because nobody has radiation, and I doubt that it would have that effect. Really, I think that the toroidal energy field, as presented here, is completely benign and would not give you any, that I can think of, any untoward effects, like long-term problems or anything like that. I just don't.
Sure. Well, I think you touch on a really important point here, which is you suggest that people make a note and they notice how they feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most important parts of the Cosmic Tower project is that it's about the alignment with natural energies and harmony, but done through the interpretation of the individual.
Yeah.
Right. And so that brings up, another topic that you brushed through earlier that I want to come back to, which is you mentioned toroidal fields and activating them on the earth.
Right.
And that's a new concept for a lot of people, and understanding that this amazing 15-inch, 35-centimeter tower is doing can be a little bit confusing. So just from your perspective, can you talk a little bit about what you know about toroidal fields and why you think activating them is important?
Well, I'm certainly not going to present myself as any expert on toroidal fields, and I do know a fair amount about energy fields from both personal experience and talk about personal interpretation. And to that point, I think it's really important that people go by how they feel. So tell them in any situation you want to go with how you feel. And pay attention, and because people often don't do that because they just think, well, this is going to be good for me, so I will pay attention. Because you might find that putting, particular copper or what on does really makes you feel better. So as far as the toroidal energy field is again, I defer to the real experts, but it's as an established whole, it's very different from a lot of the other energy fields that you have. For example, a tree has an energy field. It's like an aura, much like a human aura, but it's self-contained. You have the physical tree, and you have the etheric tree, and the aura of that, the energy field, and it can be detected with instruments. With a toroidal field, it seems that and again, it's just my thinking, but it seems that it's a whole already, and it's an integral thing that transcends the individual tree or the individual person. In other words, it's going back to an energy field which is a progenitor, something that helped grow the world, and something that the world has to refer to get reset, right, to get calibrated. And that's as such. You can't have too much of a good thing in this instance.
Yeah, that's the truth. So you've had a lot of experience with the traditional world of pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
and healing and all that, and then the alternatives and these natural energy fields. Can you talk about the how and why of the cosmic tower as a healing tool from your perspective?
Well, getting somebody into a healing situation is very difficult. Okay. In other words, say somebody benefits from Reiki or from hands-off, energy healing. Well, they can't get Reiki 24 hours a day, right? So it's impractical. They get a little treatment here, they feel better. Same thing with acupuncture, although these things actually have a longer term effect. But in order to be really effective, ideally we'd have something which is affecting us all the time. And with the cosmic tower, that's what's happening. So my expectation is deep long-term healing that is bottom line. I mean, it's done. And that is really phenomenal.
Yeah, that's super powerful.
Because people have a need to reach that point, and the emotional effects are so important. And I really feel that there's an emotional soothing with this. I mean, I was really depressed, and it's helped. It's a lot.
Yeah, you've been through an enormous amount of change, a devastating amount of change.
I felt like Job, but
yeah.
Well, it's I was it came into my life at just the perfect time. I mean, it was if it hadn't, it might not have been good. I don't know, but I mean, I've been really run through the mill, and I mean, with chronic pain and emotional upset and all that, but coming out of it beautifully with this.
Oh, I'm so glad you're experiencing less pain and more emotional stability. That's everything,
Yeah, it's everything. Yeah.
It's
So what they say, our emotional bodies are 75% of us.
Yeah, I know it's a lot. I know my life lessons have to do with emotional mastery, and whenever I have breakthroughs in that area, the whole rest of my life seems to work.
Yeah. And people don't understand, you've got the physical body here, the next body in terms of vibratory action is the mental body, and then you have the emotion. No, pardon me. The emotional body is right next to the physical body. So it's very real, and we just ignore it because we don't. The culture just doesn't allow us the time to do that now, and I think the tower helps in that regard. Is it provides some like emotional stability, because the field's always there. It's like a parent who's always there.
Yeah, that nurturing voice that we wish we got in our childhood that
Exactly. We never got not enough.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Well, it's very generous of you to share your experience and help the world understand more.
Oh, I love the opportunity. I think it's great. You guys are doing great work, and I'm fully on board. So
Thanks. Well, just one last question for you. Now that we've been through all of that, is there anything else that you've noticed in your experience with the tower? Did we catch all the things that were the major themes of change for you?
we know it's funny, and it just occurred to me is I have a very active dream life. Very, very, very active. But since I got the tower, I've not been remembering my dreams that much. I know I'm having them, but I think it could even be that in my dreams I'm doing some work that I'm not supposed to remember or whatever. So I think there's a positive reason for that. I don't feel like I'm deprived of REM or anything, but I notice a change in my dream pattern. Or
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, this life seems to be much more multidimensional than most of us really are taught to
yeah,
be understanding.
it really is. And to get back to that point where you know you're in a different, you're at that point where you can see different universe, you can see different options, that they're dimensions that are going far beyond what you can see physically. And as usual, the whole problem is if you can't see it, you've got to convince people, you've got to get them to understand it. And the nice thing with the tower is if they're sensitive and pay attention, they will feel it.
I think that's the perfect place to stop. And thank you so much for sharing your experience.
You're very welcome. All right. Have a good day, buddy.
Thank you. You too.